Have you ever stood in your backyard with the watering can in your hand, only to watch the water pool on top of the soil and spill straight over the edges of the pot? You're pouring life-giving hydration onto your struggling tomatoes. But the dirt is bone dry, pale, and hard as concrete. It physically rejects the water, acting more like a coated wax cup than actual earth. It's incredibly frustrating for any gardener, and it begs a question that the massive gardening industry hopes you never ask. How does dirt get so utterly dead that it can't even absorb a single drop of rain? The truth behind that pale, cracked dirt is tied up in a multi-billion-dollar corporate secret, but the ultimate remedy for it doesn't cost a fortune. In fact, it costs mere pennies, and the ingredients are likely sitting in your kitchen right this very second. By the time the sun goes down tonight, you can mix a shockingly simple biological tonic that triggers an overnight microscopic revolution. It can turn a barren wasteland back into a breathing, living ecosystem. But before we mix this cure, we have to talk about the grand illusion sold to us every spring. Think about your last trip to the local nursery. You probably wheeled your cart down an aisle, bursting with vibrant plastic bags boasting premium organic blends. We happily pay a premium because the shiny packaging promises a lush, effortless garden. Yet, the reality hiding inside that plastic is completely different from what nature intended: to legally transport soil across state lines and guarantee a product free of weeds. Manufacturers put these mixes through intense industrial trauma. Research conducted by Colorado State University notes that commercial soil pasteurization requires baking the earth at sustained temperatures well over 180 degrees Fahrenheit. The machinery does a fantastic job of neutralizing bad pathogens, but the sterilization process is entirely blind. It wipes out the bad, but it completely incinerates the good. The nitrogen-fixing bacteria are wiped out. The delicate mycorrhizal fungi, which have beautifully coexisted with plant roots since the dawn of time, are entirely eradicated. What you're buying isn't living soil. It's an empty, sterile sponge. In a natural forest, a plant never has to scavenge for food alone. It pumps sweet, liquid carbon out through its roots to attract a massive workforce of microscopic allies. These tiny underground partners digest solid rock, unlocking vital minerals and hand-delivering them right back to the roots. However, in bagged, sterilized soil, your plant is entirely isolated. It's trapped in a biological ghost town. This total absence of microscopic life is the cornerstone of a highly profitable business model. When the soil is dead and can't produce its own nutrients, you have absolutely no choice but to purchase synthetic chemical fertilizers. You become a lifetime subscriber to their products. When you douse your garden with concentrated synthetic salts, your plants react instantly. They shoot up and the foliage turns a deep green. You feel like an absolute gardening genius. But that sudden burst of growth is the biological equivalent of feeding a child nothing but candy bars. The plant gets a massive sugar high, growing soft, weak tissues that are entirely dependent on the next chemical fix. Down in the dark, those harsh fertilizer salts are quietly waging war. Long-term agricultural data compiled by the Rodale Institute explicitly proves that a heavy reliance on synthetic fertilizers destroys soil structure over time. The fragile bacterial communities that secrete natural glues to keep the earth soft and porous are burned alive by the salts. Once those beneficial bacteria perish, the soil simply collapses in on itself. It compacts into a dense, airless brick. Furthermore, experts at the UC Agriculture and Natural Resources explain that this breakdown of microbial life leads directly to hydrophobic soil. That is exactly why your compacted potting mix aggressively repels water. If you want to know how healthy your soil actually is, you don't need a lab test. You just need to look for worms. Charles Darwin himself felt his crowning scientific achievement was his exhaustive study on the humble earthworm. He famously declared earthworms to be the actual intestines of the world. They constantly burrow, opening up vital airways and drainage tunnels in compacted dirt. Their castings are an absolute goldmine, boasting 5 times the nitrogen and 11 times the potassium of the surrounding dirt. But when was the last time you saw a fat, happy earthworm wriggling around in a brand new bag of premium potting mix? You don't see them. Earthworms don't consume bare dirt. They feed exclusively on the microorganisms clinging to the dirt. In a sterile, chemically burned environment, they will literally starve to death. On top of that, the extreme acidity caused by raw peat and synthetic salts burns their delicate skin. If the worms abandon your land, the soil is dying. Bringing them back is surprisingly easy once you realize what they're actually looking for. During the 1980s, a visionary horticultural researcher named Dr. Teruo Higa was watching the devastating long-term effects of chemical farming unfold in Japan. he decided to flip the entire agricultural script. Instead of synthetically force-feeding the crops, he focused on feeding the microscopic lifeforms that naturally build the soil. He grouped these microscopic allies into perfectly balanced teams, and the absolute star player was Lactobacillus. Lactobacillus forms the foundation of healthy soil life, creating the perfect habitat for our earthworm allies to return. Lactobacillus is the exact same friendly bacteria that lives in your gut right now. It's the magical workforce responsible for every jar of tangy sauerkraut and every loaf of crusty sourdough humanity has ever produced. According to findings by the Cornell Cooperative Extension, when lactic acid bacteria are introduced to ruined soil, they act as a fierce biological defense system. They aggressively chew through stubborn organic matter, transforming it into incredibly rich humus. They unlock trapped minerals and literally manufacture B vitamins that trigger explosive root growth. We don't need more complex chemicals manufactured in a lab. We just need to reintroduce this ancient, microscopic workforce. And making this living elixir requires zero scientific training. We're going to use 3 incredibly basic items: rice water, blackstrap molasses, and clean wood ash. Together, they create a living, breathing tonic that no factory could ever put in a plastic bottle. The next time you prep rice for a meal, don't throw the cloudy rinse water down the drain. That milky liquid is heavily saturated with complex carbohydrates and beautiful trace minerals. It's the absolute perfect bait to catch wild lactic acid bacteria floating in the air. Pour that wash water into a clean glass mason jar, filling it about 2/3 of the way to the top. Drop in a tiny spoonful of cooked rice to act as a long-term food source. Cover the top with a piece of breathable cloth and secure it with a tight rubber band. You must never screw a metal lid onto it because these are living creatures that will suffocate without oxygen. Tuck that jar away in a dark, quiet cupboard. Keep it away from the fridge and out of direct sunlight. Leave it completely alone for 3 to 5 days. Eventually, you'll notice a pleasantly sour, tangy aroma drifting from the jar, smelling wonderfully similar to a thriving sourdough starter. In just a few days, those bacteria have multiplied into the hundreds of millions. You've successfully farmed a massive microbial army using nothing but kitchen waste. Now, these bacteria need a massive energy spike before we send them into the harsh desert of your garden pots. Take your sour rice water and mix it into roughly 1 gallon of unfluorinated water. If you use city tap water, just leave it in an open bucket overnight so the harsh chlorine can evaporate. Once mixed, vigorously stir in 1 or 2 tablespoons of dark blackstrap molasses. The microbes consume those rich sugars and immediately begin reproducing at an unbelievable rate, pumping out biological glues that will literally stitch your broken soil back together. There's one final hidden problem we have to fix. Most commercial potting soils are aggressively acidic. When the soil pH drops too low, critical nutrients become chemically locked away, starving your plants. It also heavily burns the skin of any earthworm bold enough to enter. We solve this using ordinary, untreated wood ash from a campfire. Ash is highly alkaline and packed with potassium, but raw ash is incredibly harsh on delicate plant roots. Here is where the genius of this brew shines. When you stir a 1/4 cup of sifted, clean wood ash into your acidic microbial brew, a beautiful neutralization occurs. The natural acids from your bacteria soften the harsh alkaline ash, converting those aggressive minerals into deeply soothing, bioavailable plant food. It perfectly balances the pH, making the environment incredibly welcoming for earthworms. Just ensure your ash is perfectly clean, with no chemical fire starters or painted lumber. Give it a gentle stir and let the mixture sit for about 15 minutes. You're now holding a bubbling, fiercely alive biological remedy. The magic happens at night. You want to apply this brew after the sun dips below the horizon. The cooler evening air ensures the liquid won't instantly evaporate. Take your watering can and drench your most pitiful, compacted soil. Pour it heavily until the soil is deeply saturated all the way to the bottom of the container. Then, step back and let nature take the wheel. While you're sleeping, a microscopic war is being waged. The natural surfactants in your brew immediately break the hydrophobic tension on the soil surface. Billions of lactic acid bacteria begin physically gluing themselves to root hairs, building living protective shields. By introducing this massive bacterial army, you're sending a wake-up call to the native mycorrhizal fungi lying dormant in the dirt. According to the USDA, when these fungal networks activate, they explode outward, weaving a massive underground web that can expand a plant's root mass by an astonishing 100 times. They mine distant water, trade nutrients, and even warn neighboring plants of incoming insect attacks. Within days, the ultimate proof will arrive. You'll step outside and notice tiny mounds of dark castings on the surface. The earthworms have finally returned. Your brew completely neutralized the burning acids and provided a massive buffet of microbial food. By the next morning, the surface of your soil will already feel distinctly softer. Within a week, it will eagerly drink up rainwater instead of rejecting it. And if you scoop up a handful and bring it to your face, you'll smell petrichor, that deep, intoxicating scent of a fresh summer rainstorm. That is the exact chemical signature of billions of microbes breathing life back into the earth. What we're doing on a small scale in our backyards is exactly what the entire planet desperately needs. In 2021, the nation of Sri Lanka attempted a bold experiment by completely banning synthetic chemical fertilizers overnight. The goal was to force farmers to transition to organic agriculture instantly. The goal was admirable, but the results were utterly terrifying, because those fields had been relentlessly pounded with chemicals for decades. The native soil biology was completely dead. When the artificial chemical food source was suddenly cut off, the dead dirt couldn't support the crops. Agricultural yields violently crashed. The lesson from Sri Lanka isn't that natural farming fails. It is that you can't force a dead, chemically addicted ecosystem to suddenly perform. You have to take the time to rebuild its biology first. You have to undergo a biological detox. That's exactly why you can't just abruptly stop fertilizing your tired backyard garden and expect miracles. You have to intentionally put the life back into the dirt. Only then will the ecosystem thrive again, creating a sustainable future for your garden and the planet. This simple kitchen recipe is an incredibly profound act of rebellion. It's a scientifically proven way for you to break free from an endless cycle of buying expensive plastic bottles of synthetic chemicals. You're actively rebuilding the ancient, flawless system that Mother Nature perfected millions of years ago. A jar of fermented rice wash, a splash of dark molasses, and a handful of cold fireplace ash. It's shockingly simple, yet infinitely more powerful than anything you can buy in a store. So tonight, look closely at that struggling potted plant on your patio. Mix up this elixir, pour it deeply into the pot, and tomorrow morning, run your fingers through that dirt. You'll physically feel the difference. You'll smell the life returning. And in a few weeks, that struggling plant is going to reward you with the harvest you simply can't buy in a grocery store. Until next time, keep your hands deep in the soil and your heart aligned with the earth. If you found this helpful, consider subscribing to join our growing community of mindful gardeners. Happy gardening!